Good afternoon, everyone. It's Sharon Jameson, the CEO and founder of the Jameson Group. I hope a couple of you can join me today. I just finished the last Sister Circle for 2020. Just finished it maybe half an hour ago. And I wanted to share three important themes that I saw with this cohort of women. Again, just want to share three themes that I saw in this cohort of our sister circle that I just completed maybe a half an hour ago. And this is the last sister circle that I'm going to do for 2020 because I'm going to collapse all the programs into one program called Dare to Be Me. So the first wound that it was really obvious that really supported women. It was for women, especially women of color, brown and black women, to deal with. The first issue was defensiveness. Defensiveness. And if this resonates with you, please share it, right? One of the things that is really important for women, especially brown and black women, to deal with is that it makes sense that sometimes we are a bit defensive. Can we just be honest? If we really think about it, as brown and black women, we have our own trauma from growing up, from dealing with being bullied or whatever the issues were as a child. But then as brown and black women, we deal with this collective trauma from seeing people hurt, from seeing people picked apart, from seeing violence. We have this collective trauma, but we also have this inherited trauma that got passed down to us from our mothers. So if you really think about it, we deal with our own personal trauma, our collective trauma from being a brown and black person in America. We deal with our own inherited trauma that was passed down from our caregivers. And so when you grow up in a culture where you don't feel valued, and when you don't feel valuable, when you grow up in a culture where everybody is trying to pick you apart and tell you what you can't do, that you're too dark, too fat, too this and too that, it's understandable that it's hard to hear feedback. It's understandable that it's hard to hear negative things about you when you constantly hear negative things about you, or when you constantly hear negative things about people who look like you. So I want to just pause and say, yes, women of color, brown and black women, may be more defensive. It doesn't make it right, but it is understandable. But it's still our responsibility, even though it's hurtful, it's still our responsibility to heal our defensiveness. Because if we cannot hear feedback, we cannot feed ourselves forward toward building bigger businesses, building better relationships, building ourselves, building our connection with others. But I want just to be aware, for us to recognize that it is understandable that we are defensive, and it's understandable that the people closest to us might not be the ones who can give us feedback, right? It is hard to hear from people who are trying to tell you something in your ear, but then they're punching you in your stomach, punching you in your heart. It's hard to hear and listen with people who always have something negative to say. And then when they want to tell you something that you really need to hear, you can't hear it from them because they have done so much damage to the relationship. So I want you to know, as women of color, brown women, black women, really all women, it's understandable that we're more defensive, but we have to heal our defensiveness so we can move on to winning. So that's one thing. Yes, you may be defensive, but there's reasons. And if you live in a culture who never celebrates you, or if you live in a culture or a family that constantly beats you up, sometimes it's hard to listen to things you need to listen to. It doesn't make it right. I just want us to understand it so that we can do something about it. So that's one thing. The second thing I want, is important for women to hear, especially women of color, that sometimes we do live in denial. We do, right? All women do it, but I want to just really talk to us. Why is that important? denial for some of us has become the only way that we were able to survive. So our denial becomes a survival mechanism. Unfortunately, then it becomes a sinking mechanism, right? We're surviving, so we think, but then we're sinking in despair, sinking in mediocrity, sinking in destructive behavior, right? Now, I really don't believe, and I have worked with thousands of women, that anybody is just signing up and saying, oh, I just want to be in denial. It doesn't happen that way. What happens is that the pain is so great, or we lack the discipline, or we lack the discernment, or we lack the education, or we lack the strength. Sometimes we just lack the support to move ourselves forward. But nobody is really signing up to say, oh, I'm just going to deny this. They're setting it up because it's too painful, or they don't have the tools, or they don't have the wherewithal to do anything about. Now, why is that important? It's important because sometimes we make ourselves feel guilty because we are saying, or we allow people to call us out that we are then in denial, right? But I want you to hear something, that if your head and in your heart are not in alignment, it's easier to betray your truth. I'm going to say that again. When your head and when your heart are not in alignment, it's easy to betray your own soul. Thanks so much for sharing, see Shay and Rebecca and Cheryl. So we have to be careful that we don't beat ourselves up because we are in denial. Now we have to do something about it. But the person who keeps telling you that you are in denial might not be the people who can help you. Sometimes we have to find objective people outside of our circle so that we can hear the objective information and so that we can experiment and experience getting healthier. Nobody signs up to be in denial. Nobody signs up to stay in mediocrity. Nobody signs up to stay in addiction. Nobody signs up to stay in dysfunction. It's a reason why a person is there. And it's a reason why a person is having having challenges pulling themselves out of that, right? Beating someone up is not going to help someone get better. You cannot insult a person into improvement. You cannot berate someone into being better. It doesn't work that way. So I want you to know, yes, sometimes we are in denial. And how do you know that you are in denial? Because your body will tell you so. We all have this body compass that lets us know something is awry and something is off and something is out of alignment. Because your intuition is also your inter-witness. And sometimes we know intuitively that something is off. We just don't know what to do about it. And so sometimes we just stay in denial as a means of survival. We don't want to be there, but we're there. But I just want to say that because I saw and I see so many women beating themselves up. But just like the late Dr. Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you will do better. And so find a support system, which might not be the system that you're in now. Find another sister circle who can see you with brand new eyes and see you with a fresh understanding to help usher you into wholeness. Because the people who are trying to point out that you are in denial, many times they are in denial themselves and they can't help you because they're sinking themselves, right? Or they can't help you because they have damaged the relationship so desperately and deeply that they can't really help you hear yourself and see yourself with new eyes. Okay, that's the second thing. The third thing is that as women of color, for us to move from wounds to winning, of course, we have to, again, understand that we might be experiencing some defensiveness. We might be experiencing some denial. The third thing is we might be experiencing some depression. Now, when I talk about depression, I am not talking about medical depression, right? That's different. I have been medically depressed. I know what that feels like. I have been so depressed that I could not get out of bed. I have been so depressed that I have slept for months. I know medical depression. So I just want to affirm that and to put that out there. I'm talking about situational depression. And I want to say this, that sometimes we feel depressed because we have been oppressed. Depression is a result of systemic oppression. When you are in a toxic environment, you don't feel seen, heard, or supported. When you feel undervalued and undermined, it is understandable that you will become depressed. And that's why United States is number 3 in depression. And I'm not talking about medical depression. Well, like I said, I've had that. I'm talking about situational depression caused by oppression. When you are in an environment, a work environment, a culture environment, dealing with microaggressions, when you are dealing with people stealing your work, not being seen, where you're in a relationship or in a family where you feel like you're the oddball, where you have to hustle for acceptance, that you have to sell your soul and compromise your integrity to be in the in crowd, that is a different form of oppression. And if I have to oppress my truth, oppress my essence, oppress my feelings and my perspectives to have a sense of belonging in my family, in my organization, in my faith tradition, in my sorority, I am going to be oppressed. One of the most dangerous things that can happen for women, for especially women of color, is to be in a culture, be in a system, be in an organization, be in a family where their gifts are undermined, where their talents are not seen, when their truth is not affirmed. That will make you physically, emotionally, and spiritually sick. So I want us to understand that if we are in a system that doesn't celebrate us, that it's hard to feel anointed and anchored when you've been assaulted emotionally, verbally, and spiritually. It's hard to be centered and celebrated when you always are being condemned and criticized. It's hard to feel, to not have resentment and regret when you're living in a restrictive place. And sometimes the restriction is not on the outside. Sometimes the restricted is all already in your mind, in your soul, because you have been told that you were nothing. All for the last 2 months, we had this sister group, and those were the 3 themes that keep showing up. So I want to really ask you to look at your life. When we are whole inside and we're operating from a place of wholeness, we don't really care what's happening externally. Because when you are feeling whole, you can command external circumstances to fall in line. When you feel whole, you can command and advocate for yourself. When you feel whole, you can command somebody to treat you well. You can command to be seen and heard. You can command it, or you will not allow people to have access to you. Right? But when you don't feel whole, you allow yourself to become unanchored and you drift. You drift in someone else's understanding of who you are. You allow other people to define you and confine you. So I want you to really be mindful as women of color to move from wounds to winning, because we were all created to win. All of us, Shay, Cheryl, Strong, Sister Strong, all of us were created to win. We came to this world wired to win. That's why we came to this world with skills, abilities, talents. Some of our talents and our abilities we have to recover. Some of our talents we have to discover, right? Because we have been socialized out of our amazingness. We have been colonized out of our amazingness. And that's why it's important to get with a good sister circle, a good group where you can try on different aspects of yourself unapologetically without judgment. So 3 things that I've learned from working with this sister group, and I'm talking about high-powered women, women who know who they are, know who they are not. We all have struggled. I'm raising my hand with being defensive, which means that I'm walking with armor on. And when you armored up, you can't hear. It takes another set of eyes to rise. That means you can't be defensive, but it's hard not to be when you have been beat up and live in a culture that has beat you up. One, defensiveness. Two, again, I want you to think about, are you in denial? And you could be, right? You could be as a means of survival. Hey, a tank. But we can heal it. But just because it's hurtful doesn't mean it can't be healed, right? So we got to deal with our defensiveness. We got to deal with our denial. Dr. Reverend Anika Brown can tell you that she is one of the most amazing preachers, teachers in the world. But we also got to deal with this depression, not medical situational depression that becomes because we are being oppressed. Racism is violence against the spirit. And that's why I'm speaking about it. People are saying, Sharon, why you talk about racism and sexism? I've always talked about it. People wouldn't listen in. Because I understand that when I'm oppressed, I don't get to use my gifts. I don't get to use my guts. I don't get to use my talents. And anytime I don't get to be who God created me to be, I set myself up for sickness and sadness. Yeah. So I want you to hear me today. I want you to hear me today. I don't know if I'm preaching or teaching, and maybe I'm doing a little bit of both because that's how I roll. Get with the sister group. Because you were created to win, not whine, win, not suffer and struggle, but succeed and strive, not beg, but to build and blossom. But you gotta be with people who can accept all of you and understand that unhealed people cannot be supportive of you. If a person is unhealed, they don't have the capacity to stand witness. We need to be witness, but you can't be witnessed by people who have broken vision and broken spirits. They can't see you. You need to be witness. It's hard to win without being witnessed, but you can't be witness with people who can't see, right? And it's not that they don't want to see. They have been blinded by their own hurt, their own dysfunction. So I want to ask you, yeah, healing requires confrontation, but confrontation is just not enough, because I see people confronting it. Confronting means that you don't confront it. It's never a one and done. Healing is a journey. Healing is never instantaneous. It's incremental. We heal in shifts and pivots, in strides and stumbles. Shifts and pivots and strides and stumbles. And confrontation is so important, but confrontation is just the beginning, because sometimes you got to keep confronting that demon and that devil. And because the devil that really kills you is not the ones that live outside, it's the ones that live in your heart and in your head. That's the devil that you got to take under submission. You got to pull down that stronghold, right? So I just want to leave it with you. Thank you so much, Shirley Robinetta, for being with me. Get with the sister group. I said, again, I'm not doing any more sister groups until 2021. But I am starting Dare to Be Me. And it's 6 months, 6 months. You cannot heal in 3 weeks. If it took you 40 years to get jacked up, you're not going to get better in 40 days. You might not get better in 40 months. It's a journey. You graduate from high school, but you don't graduate from self-development. You don't graduate from development. It's just like, it's kind of like you don't graduate from Bible study. You know what I'm saying? Some things are ongoing. So I just want you to think about, and something I always hear people say, well, I can't afford therapy. You can't afford not to go to therapy, because the price you're going to pay for not getting healed is a substandard life. The price you're going to pay for not addressing your wounds is mediocrity and misery and mess. The price that you're going to pay by not getting healed is to never know what God had in mind when God created you. You're never going to know what God has in place inside of you if you don't get healed. Our gifts are under the grit. Here's the grit. Your gifts are under your grit, and your gifts right here are fighting to get outside to be expressed, but they can't fight against the dysfunction that are holding them hostage. Yeah? So I'm telling you what I've learned. I've been in therapy for about 25 years and probably need to go back now, because all this racism got me about to cuss 15 people out on a daily. But I want you to think about, what are you doing to heal yourself? I don't care if it costs thousands of dollars. You are wasting time and talent and treasure. The $1,000 that you spend might be the $1,000 that you can make if you get healed. Because when you're not whole, your spirit is in holes. And what fills up the holes? More dysfunction, more addiction, more pathology. Let's close the holes. The gifts are ready to be activated, but you got to fill in the gaps. The gaps where destruction and damage is taking place in your life. So I thought this was going to be 5 minutes. So let me get off of here. Find a sister circle. Don't go to people who are close to you. You are not going to hear them. People cannot give you feedback when they've been living with you because they can only see who you used to be and not who you are becoming. You need a set of fresh eyes to rise. You need people to see you with new thoughts, new awareness, new anointing, because some people are not anointed to see you. Amen. So I leave it there. I want you to think about it. Dr. Anika is here. Sign up with her. Vicki Johnson is wonderful. Sign up with her. Sign up with me. Dare to be me. We start at the end of September and go throughout January. Is that 6 months? Well, December was 6 months. I don't know what. September, I think. Well, I don't know what. February. We go 6 months. But these are the 3 things that came up in my sister circle. Women, we can move from wounds to winding, but we got to do the work. But guess what? It's nothing more important than you. Self-care is just not about getting your nails done or getting a new weave or getting your hair dyed like I need to do. Self-care is about making yourself whole. Self-care is holiness, wholeness, wellness. I'm going to say it again. Self-care is holiness, is wholeness, is wellness. And you deserve all 3. So think about Dare to Be Me. Get with Dr. Vicki. Get with Dr. Anika Brown. Get with who else? God, I can't even think of people's names, but there are many other coaches who are culturally competent. Hear me now, culturally competent. Don't go to these people who don't know the experience of a brown or black woman and think that they're going to help you with the systemic racism and the oppression and how white privilege strips you of your privilege. You go to somebody who knows you, who knows the water that you swim in, and understand who you are. Yeah. So I'm about to go. Blessings. Thanks so much for joining me, Cheryl and Joanne and Robinetta Brown. Blessings to you. God bless you. Get your sister circle. Hope to see some of you in Dare to Be Me. If not, find the right person who's culturally competent, who can speak to your specific situation, because the best is yet to come. Blessings.